And hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode on Ohana Hobby Workshop. So, today we're going to be doing something a bit different. And as you can see, we're actually going to be doing a podcast sort of thing and slash review on the Scutari range. So, this will be going over price comparisons, models, accessibility, comparisons between obviously the new one and the old one, and also compatibility for like beginner players and also veterans and moderate players, covering as much bases as we can in the time. So it's not just myself, Mango Smasher, today. I am joined here by Teamella771, who is also going to be part of this. So yeah, are you there, Timella?
Yes, I am. Yeah.
Oh,
So I guess today I'm being Fabricator General, am I?
something like that, yeah. But yeah, so this is the first podcast we would have done on the channel. Sorry about all the squeakiness, that's my chair. So first off, let's start talking about just the starter boxes in general. So if we go for price comparison, so the new one is £60 for UK,
Yeah.
and I think the older one, so the run on the right hand side with the Dune Crawler, the Dominus, Temporaries, and the Scutari Rangers of Vanguard. I think that was around 65 from memory. So no, that's why. I know that's why.
No,
Or was it
it
less?
was less. It was about 50 to 55.
Okay.
So the new one's 60 quid. The old one was about 50, 55
That
from
makes sense.
memory.
Yeah, I can't remember how much. I know it was around the 60 mark of what I paid for it when I bought it.
Yeah.
So straight off the back, obviously, price comparisons for your money. What do you think is the better value for money between the two Admech boxes from the old to the new?
See, it depends what you're looking for. So for me, personally, I would actually say the newer box. Mainly because you get a little bit more versatility in your box set. So you get the choice between the Dune Rider or the Disintegrator. Now, I haven't really played anything because, the world being the way it is at the minute. You get a lot more modularity, and it actually makes more sense for the newer box to be out. So with your standard Scutari stuff, you've got your Rangers and your Vanguards. They are your bog standard troops, and no complaint. They are pretty good units if you know how to run them effectively. And the other one is the Engine Seer. Okay, maybe not as cool as the Dominus, but definitely a nice little touch, I would say, by GW to try and not rinse and repeat everything.
Yeah, I think that's the main thing between these two boxes alone. It's mixing the old with the new, essentially.
Yeah.
So obviously the Disintegrator and the Dune Rider is a fairly new kit. It's a lot newer than the Dune Crawler. But the fact they brought some of the older elements into it, so they brought the Temporaries engines here. Now you don't see really much about now in gaming. Well, from what I can see,
No.
not many people really use it. It's more like it's very rare. Obviously, if you're playing Imperial Guard, you tend to use them anyway for your tanks.
Yeah.
But apart from that, you don't really see them. So, if there was one thing you would do to like combine the sets, or so if you could mix the two, so we'll take the current one and the old one. If you could mix them, what miniatures would you essentially take from the two to make like your ideal star collecting?
So my ideal start collecting, for me, would actually be running the would actually basically just be taking the Dune Rider slash Disintegrator over to the older style box. Only because of the fact that back in sort of 7th, you needed more you needed transports really. But yeah, I think it would probably be that, taking it over. And you could do, or conversion wise, you could run a Dune Crawler's legs with the gun from the Disintegrator. That would look pretty cool.
So, would you say then, between the two kits, because you brought up conversions, would you say there's a lot of, which one would you say there's more conversion options for, the older kit or the newer one?
The older kit, just because I have seen some pretty cool conversions with it already. So I saw someone making a dreadnought out of the legs of the Dune Crawler, and then using the body of the Titanicus Warlord for their custom chapter, and that looked really good.
But yeah, I can definitely agree with that sort of aspect with the Dune Crawler, because I'm very big into my converter as well. And I actually took the Dune Crawler and mixed it with the Death Guard Blight Drone. Use some guitar string as well. Another good thing to use for cabling. If you don't want to use green stuff, get some guitar string that's old, knackered, or new, up to you. Combine them to do, because I feel that for myself, especially with the older one, there is more compatibility. So we mentioned about the Blight Drone with the Dune Crawler, the the Dominus Temporaries. I mixed that with a Lord of Contagion. So that was another thing. Whereas if we take, obviously, the Rangers and the Vanguard, they're pretty basic. You could turn them into pretty much anything. So if I keep with the Death Guard thing, you could turn them into Poxwalkers or some really wacky sort of stuff. If we take the newer kit, I don't feel there's enough compatibility there with the conversioners. So people that do a lot of conversions, it seems to be very not bland, because both boxes are still really good, great value for money. But at the same time, there is more swing, we'll call it, with the older box. So if we look at price components, so obviously with the newer box, it's essentially there's more stuff in it, so obviously the price is a bit more. So essentially, I think the Dune Crawler, off the top of my head, is around 25, maybe £30 UK money. Let's double check all this on my notes.
I didn't get that far, to be honest.
So obviously now, we're looking at price compatibility. So obviously your Skitarii Rangers / Vanguard, they're 27.50. So okay, that's quite a decent chunk of that £60, £55 straight away there. Obviously with the Rangers and the Vanguard, do you think, like, for that sort of price there, it's like a good sort of price range because it is two kits in one, or do you think it could be like a bit lower in price?
I mean, to be honest, with the price range of GW at the minute, actually, it's a pretty decent price. I wouldn't say it's too high, but I wouldn't say it's too low either. I think, obviously, with the Admech having a few of the newer toys that have come out, but at the same time, seeing other factions like Space Marines getting larger units, the actual price range for them isn't as bad as you think. So, to be honest, I think they're still a pretty decent price.
So, would you say there's between, we'll go for it kit by kit. So the Rangers and Vanguard, would you say there's enough customizability with the kit between the pair of them, or would there be something you would like to see in essentially like an update of the kit, whether it's a new sculpt or just something they add in to essentially throw you off of it.
See, I would like to see a bit more of a newer sculpt, with obviously in regards to the Alpha and the transonic arquebus, so the sniper unit, because although yes, they can be posed slightly differently, so the Alpha can be posed slightly differently to give you a slightly different effect. The sniper and the arc rifle trooper, they are very much static to what they can wield and how they can have certain bits on them. So with the arc rifle, it's got a connecting pipe that goes from the backpack to the rifle, and which means you can only have it in that way unless you're really good with a scalpel and can modify it just enough to give you a slightly different angle on the body.
Yeah.
But that's my only real gripe with it. It's just those little things where I think the sculpt could be redone. Maybe just add a little bit of detail on maybe a couple of other guys, because it does feel like you're just looking at the same model again. But that's the AdMech for you.
Yeah. And I think that's understandable then, because they don't really have a large range as such if you take some of the bigger armies. So, like Chaos, the Imperial Guard, the Space Marines, yes, Mechanicus do get access to Knights. That's still not there's still not a lot unique to them.
No.
Sorry about that. So essentially now, so we'll put both the Tech Priest into the same question. So obviously Tech Priest Dominus is $22.50, and the Tech Priest you get in the new set is £20. So it's very similar price range between the pair of them. But in your opinion, if you were to get offered, essentially said, okay, you can only pick one of these, and essentially, what would you pick? And do you think that maybe they could put all the Tech Priest at the same price, so the Dominus and the standard one? Or do you think it's good pricing for each one?
So, I would personally go with Dominus, just because there is a bit more going on it. There's a bit more posability, and it's a lot easier to swap heads and add little bits and do like full weapon swaps on them. Because it is actually a multi-part plastic mold. With the engine seer, obviously it's if I remember correctly, it's like only 3 parts from building it. So it's front and the body, the back, the head. So the back and the head is one unit, or the front and the head, can't remember which way, and the arms with the axe, and that's it, basically. So I felt like they missed a massive opportunity with the engine seer. Trying to like make that something different and a bit more going on. But then it's really just an updated sculpt of the old engine seer, the metal one.
Yeah, I believe they're very similar in looks and aesthetic. So obviously the metal one, it is near enough an identical one. So the only really difference is the pose, and slightly he's more of a swing in motion, whereas the newer one that comes in the starter set is obviously a steadfast sort of style.
He's advancing.
Yeah, so looking over it, obviously the kits. So obviously with the Tech Priest, it comes in. There are essentially your main build to the guy is 3 parts, Then obviously you have, so if we were to ignore backpack and extra little bits like that, the main body is the three parts. So the front has the head on, obviously the back has the back, and then the arms all together as well. And then obviously for your extra parts, you got your pouches, you got the backpack, you got the like crane sort of thingy, we'll call it. But yeah, I think they could have done a lot more with that, especially with the aesthetic, because besides it being a plastic one instead of a metal one, it looks very much like the older one.
Yeah.
It's just it's essentially a revamp, so a Temporaries 2.0, we'll call it.
Yeah, that's exactly how I'd see it, as a Temporaries 2.0.
And then obviously with Dominus, there's a lot more going on. He's very the whole miniature alone. If you would compare the two, obviously bigger base, bigger miniature. So it's very nice and aesthetic the way it is, the way it's been essentially shown
Sculpted.
off. Yeah, sculpted and shown off. Like that pose suits him. Suits that one.
Yeah.
So for like price wise, do you think that it's fair price in the paying an extra £2.50 for a Dominus rather than a standard Temporaries, or do you think the Temporaries should be a bit lower, or vice versa?
I mean, the Dominus should be a little bit lower, I think. I mean, I know to some people £2.50 isn't a lot, but if say this is your first army, for instance, and you decided to go into GW one day and they didn't have any of these start collecting boxes, and you like the look of the Temporaries Dominus versus the Engine Seer. Now, personally, from painting a load of Dominuses for just fun, for friends, whatever, I would have gone for the Dominus as a 13-year-old kid because it looks fun, more going on, and I don't think the Dominus should be £22.50. Obviously, being in the hobby for the time I have seen the price hikes, and there are times where I have gone, really, why is it that high? So yeah, I think the Dominus should be a bit lower, maybe a pound lower, like pound. If it was a pound above, then you could swing it either way, sort of thing.
Yeah, and I think that's the main thing. Obviously, as you have pointed out, there is a lot. There's more going on with that miniature. I think for myself though, I would probably drop the Dominus to 20, just because obviously, I've been in the hobby a long time now, 17 years. So I've seen all the prices going up and that. Obviously, I know how they do their molds and stuff like that. Because it's more than anything. The reason I put that to 20 is not because there's a lot going on. Because for me, the standard Temporaries, that would be around 18 mark. I would have personally put it. Just because obviously it's a lot smaller. You're basically paying an extra. If we take the old version into the metal variant, you're paying an extra 10 quid just for a plastic miniature. That's a bit excessive. Go
on. When you put it like that, it is a crazy amount. So yeah, a £10 difference. That's an extra paint or two. When you think about it.
Yeah, I think as well. Obviously, like white metal is expensive in all fairness to use, but plastic isn't as expensive. You can get the stuff you use, so the chemicals and that, very cheaply, because you can buy in mass bulks and stuff like that. So it works out quite cheap.
The price. Sorry, go on.
That's right. But yeah, so essentially for me, I would have rather seen that at the 18 mark, 15 to 18 mark, just because obviously plastic is cheaper to make than white metal, hence why they're coming out of white metal and resin. But even then, for me, that price is paying an extra £10 for a privilege of having a miniature that's not much of a difference. It's obviously that's going to be a bit bigger. So you would take that into account, and obviously the sculpt. But yeah, for me, I would personally drop the Doms to 20 instead of the 2250, and then the Temporaries down to like 18. Just because of obviously sizes, sculpts, and obviously if you think about it from a marketing aspect, plastic is very cheap to essentially make miniatures from. So there is that.
And I mean, when you look at the sprues, it's all injection molded, so it's working on continuous. Well, not continuous. It's done on batch. So
yeah. So essentially, we'll go into actually since you brought injection molding up, we'll go into a bit of detail. So basically, the way that they run is it's essentially they'll have 1 or 2 machines set up, but that injection mold isn't doing like one sprue.
No.
There'll be 10, 20, 30, depending on the size of the miniature. If we take obviously the Temporaries engines here, you're probably looking at maybe 25 to 50 of those sprues in one mold. Obviously, where it's injection molds are very good. It's more precise. So you can get more done with it. It's very, very much easable access. And I think that's the main thing. And it's actually a cheaper way of doing stuff. Obviously, with white metal, it throws its own complications in because I'm not sure if you can inject that mold with white metal or not. So that's probably why the white metal in a sense is obviously a bit more expensive.
No, it's well, it'd be now a lead-free pewter, so it's basically the same as injection molding with a 2-part mold, but you'd be using a sandcast, and then I think a lot of the older players like yourself who've used white metal would have probably come across the odd air bubble in the middle of your mold somewhere.
Yeah, I think as well the transition over the years from obviously lead, it was like white metal / lead. Some people called it lead, some people called it white metal, other people just call it metal. But the transition they've done over the years is very good, just because they are getting the nitty-gritty details out. But at the same time, it's like they're doing the cheaper methods of making the miniatures. So obviously, as we all know, consumers and companies, they like to bump it up a little bit more to make a bit more profit. And it's like, okay. So obviously, the last thing on the box in the boxes. So obviously, we have the Disintegrator, the Dune Rider for the newer one, and the Dune Crawler. So we've already spoken a bit about the Dune Crawler.
Yeah.
And the Dune Rider / Disintegrator. So both of them recently priced. They're both 15. Nope. If they were £15, that'd be amazing. They're 45 quid a set for the box, essentially, for the miniature. So what we'll do then, so if we take the Dune Crawler, so obviously the Dune Crawler from paper side, from a standpoint alone, how do you feel? Is there enough in the kit, and is there enough aesthetic to really warrant that sort of price? Or do you think it's a fair price, or do you think that they could higher it or lower it, depending on compatibility with obviously conversions and stuff like that?
So, funny enough, actually, I own both the Dune Rider and the Dune Crawler. And from my personal point of view, from a sort of technical mindset, the Dune Crawler is a really, really good bit of work. It's quite challenging to put together at times. So each of the legs has a sideways motion to them.
Yeah.
So you can actually pose it in slightly different poses depending on how you want your model to look. The gun, obviously, if you do it right, if you say you wanted to magnetize it, you can really easily. And for transport, the gun just literally rotates up and off. and it breaks down into then what, 3 bits if you class the gun as a part.
Yeah, essentially it's a 3-part for that one gun.
Yeah, so like so you've got the legs, the body, and the gun you can take apart, put into your box, and you know nothing's going to be broken.
Mm.
Like you can safely chuck that in the loft for like maybe what, 10 years, forget about it, find it again, put it back together, and it looks pretty much fine. The Funny enough, I actually have it beside me right now. The Dune Rider, on the other hand, although it is basically a mono build, it's literally. I'm trying to think. I'm just trying to look at it now. One, two. Basically, 5 parts for the main body.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's really easy to put together. Yes, right. That is something I'll give it credit for. But the one issue I have is the Cognis stubbers that poke out the side.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I quite literally tapped mine the other day with a cup, and one of the stubbers has fallen off, so I need to re-glue that back in.
Mm-hmm.
But with that, I can see even in the newer style box with the sort of zigzagged foam, these just becoming an issue and getting snagged on the foam, on other models, breaking off just in transit. There's a lot that I can see going wrong with it.
Yeah.
But then again, the gun pops off the top. And even the gun itself is really simplified. It's literally a interference fit base plate with a servitor on it, and then the guns and the armor are built around the servitor.
Mm-hmm.
That is it. So from the weapons side of view, that's fine. Like that can all be sort of just friction fitted on, and it just sits there happily.
Yeah.
But I would worry about keeping that in storage for long periods of time.
Yeah, and I think that's quite a fair thing because obviously, so obviously I'm looking at both the Dune Rider and the Disintegrator right now. So you can tell the differences. So essentially, you obviously have the Dune Rider, that's an open top vehicle. Obviously, Disintegrator is closed top. So one of the things that I think I've noticed between the two kits is obviously the Disintegrator, obviously where it's a confined shell, we'll call it. You may need that extra support because I feel that a lot of GW miniatures now need that extra support. So essentially, so what I mean by that, essentially popping a couple of elastic bands around it just to keep it all intact so it's flush. That's the only really thing I can really think of that would be like, besides obviously the heavy stubbers from the sides, it's going to be an issue. That's the only really thing with the Disintegrator. I think as well, if you were to look at it obviously from a magnetizing point, so trying to magnetize it, it could work very well. You'd have to be very careful where you've done that anyway, in general.
Sorry. Yeah, go
on. So I think with the magnetizing route, it would work for both miniatures. It would be, I think it's more compatible with obviously the Dune Crawler, because obviously the Dune Rider and Disintegrator are obviously essentially tanks. Magnetizing tanks, there's not really much you can really do with them. Obviously, you can do like weapons, like the turrets, any of the guys inside to magnetize them. But at the same time, it's like, okay, it's more, not so much more effort, but it would be more of a complicated matter to do it with a tank than essentially a walker. Because that's basically what they are, a tank and walker.
Yeah. So sorry if I just quickly interject here.
That's right.
With the Dune Crawler, because I do want to run it as a the Dune Rider. I've glued the front and top together, so from that point of view, you don't really need to magnetize the roof or the front.
Yeah.
Because it just comes away as one unit.
Mm-hmm.
The only issue is you would have to magnetize the servitor and the guns, because the way the whole body of it sits together, it's basically the front sort of vision plate of the Dune crawler,
Yeah.
and then with two little bits on the side.
Mm.
And for that to sit where it does, it sits right on the front of the servitor.
Okay.
So it doesn't. It'd be really quite hard to magnetize that area in particular, because it's probably about, looking at it,
It's quite
probably about
thin.
10 mil.
Yeah, so it's
If
quite
that, yeah,
yeah, it's quite thin then. So obviously, we've gone over the contents and stuff.
yeah,
So pricing, honestly, the new 160, the old one is between 50, it was between, we'll say 50 to 60, just in case. Because it could have been the
yeah.
same price, I can't remember off the top of my head. So if we actually look at the box content, so essentially in the newer box, you get the Rangers for free.
Yeah.
Compared to the old box, you actually get the Dominus and half a box of Rangers / Vanguard for free.
Yeah.
So I think if we take, so if we sum this up, essentially, so yes, while the new one is good for value, and so is the old one, they're both very good in value for what you get. So for me personally, I would prefer the old one or something similar. They worked out a similar sort of, we'll call it essentially 3 miniatures
Hmm.
for the um, old one, because obviously you get a Dominus and half a box of Rangers for free compared to Rangers for free. In this hobby, we all like to save money,
Hmm.
essentially. So on the final one we got is so compatibility. So what I mean by that is, do you think we will take it from like beginners aspect? So which one do you think would be more appealing to a beginner? And then obviously moderate players, and then obviously your veterans, so like your competitive gaming for tournaments. So if you
Hmm.
were to take the old box and the new box, what category do you think they would fall more into? More for like beginner players or people that play occasionally for fun, or for the more experienced veterans, we'll call them, who do like
So,
tournaments and stuff.
obviously, depending on the box, so depending on the player, so new players,
Mm-hmm.
um, I would definitely more, if you could try and get it, I would steer them more towards the old box set, only because you only need the standard codex for them, which makes things a lot easier and a lot cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that would be what I'd say with newer players, um, but with more sort of middle. So like for myself, sort of middle tier players, they kind of know the game. They've collected a few miniatures by this point. I would actually push more towards the newer box set,
Mm-hmm.
only because you get the new toys that come with it. You get the Dune Rider. You get the um, disintegrator as a kit. You get to play around with the tech priest, which is obviously quite rare for you to see on the battlefield now.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone likes a good foot slogging amount of Rangers or Vanguard.
Yeah.
Um, so,
So yeah.
and with experienced players, honestly, it's what's down to them and what they feel more comfortable playing.
So
Um,
would you say for
so
experienced players, and that's right, I started cutting on that. So would you say for experienced players,
that's all right.
it's more for the type of list / army they were building?
Yeah,
Depends on which one would be more compatible.
yeah. So if you wanted to build a really quick, heavy hitting. I wouldn't call it a dirty list, but I'd call it a very quick, heavy hitting army. You just pick up 3 of the new boxes, and you're literally there, ready to go. You've got a tank detachment. You've got 30 Rangers / Vanguard, and you can. It's always useful to have 1 or 2 extra tech priests hanging around.
Yeah, I think I definitely agree with that. It's definitely a good start. It's not so much a starting point. I feel the new boxes are turning into. I feel that obviously this box will go out of date once the new box comes out. But it seems like they're heading in a way where they're trying to promote not so much competitive, but they're trying to promote people for like tournaments and stuff like that because they feel more tournament friendly compared to your standard, like the old box. The old box was more of a fun sort of thing, like casual. It seems that they're trying to push for more a tournament sort of style. I feel personally. So
yeah, that's exactly kind of how I felt when first seeing the new boxes. Because I was in not my local GW, but I was in a GW that I knew very well. And the guys that are there run their own tournament team, and they were looking at it and going, "This doesn't feel like an open play box anymore. This feels a lot more of a tournament / narrative play, but box at this point."
Yeah.
So
that's right. So on that note, we are gonna finish the review there. So just to summarize, essentially, then, Tamela, if you could get hold of both boxes, for your sort of compatibility, which one would you prefer, from the old box or the new box?
good question. I'm going to say, because I want to get more sort of fun play and maybe go into sort of tournament eventually, probably the newer box. Just because there is already that setup of running heavy hitting armored units, or running a almost snatch and grab sort of squad. So if we're playing a game where I wanted just to sort of wipe, I would run a Scorpicus Disintegrator with the Belarus Cannon. But then if I wanted to run sort of snatch and grab sort of objectives game, I would definitely more or less run it as a Dune Rider, with Skitarii mounted into it, because you can run them up to your first objective, deploy them, have them ready, and then keep your engine seer as close to your vehicle as possible.
Yeah. So
that's how I'd run it.
Yeah, I think that's a very good way of looking at it. So yeah, but for anyone, if you for anyone else that watches this, leave a comment below on which one you prefer. Whether it's the older sort of fun sort of style, or do you prefer that the GW is essentially going more tournament sort of game, more game pressure, we'll call it. But yeah, so thank you for everyone for watching this video. If you did get this far, much appreciated. And if you did enjoy the review today, consider hitting that like and subscribe button. Schedule is every Wednesday. We'll be getting a video up, and then obviously if we can get extras up, we will. All links to social medias and for Tamela as well will be down in the description. So on that note, we will see everyone on another episode of Ohana Hobby Workshop.